Hello, and welcome to India Mobile Congress 2020. My name is Madeleine Noland. I'm the president of ATSC, and I'm honored to moderate today's session on 5G broadcasting, from fallow to high throughput, opportunities for India to leverage ATSC 3.0 technology. ATSC is an international standards development organization. ATSC 3.0 was developed by ATSC members from across the globe. Together, these engineers sought to address key global trends in data consumption. Consumers' appetite for video and entertainment is relentlessly increasing. The Internet of Things and Industry 4.0 are emerging verticals with massive data needs, and the proliferation of devices, both fixed and mobile, is unmistakable. As a result, spectrum grows more and more valuable, putting pressure on regulators and spectrum users to employ new efficiencies. This can be achieved in two key ways. One, we can develop and utilize technology that maximizes spectrum capacity. And two, enable convergence across heterogeneous networks so that the right network is used for the right job at the right time. ATSC 3.0 effectively addresses both key needs. It's the most efficient one-to-many wireless technology in the world today, maximizing capacity of existing spectrum. And it is convergence ready, able to operate side by side with other wireline and wireless networks, allowing, for example, broadcast traffic offload to free up capacity in unicast networks. ATSC is now in its fourth year of commercial deployment in South Korea. It's reaching 70% of Korean households, and it's being rolled out in the US now, with the expectation that 75% of US households will be served by this time next year. ATSC is very happy to be closely collaborating with India. The ATSC India implementation team is dedicated to the Make It in India initiative, welcoming new innovations, products, and solutions for ATSC 3.0. ATSC is also pleased to have MOUs with TSDSI and with IIT Kanpur, and ongoing dialogue with Prasar Bharti. In fact, we are very excited to announce a new agreement with TSDSI that paves the way for ATSC 3.0 standards to be transposed to TSDSI standards. This will further ensure that it is India's engineers and stakeholders that mold and develop ATSC 3.0 to suit India's unique landscape. Today's session will explore opportunities to leapfrog broadcast technology, not only to serve its own growing needs for data in India, but also to become the gold standard for wireless network technology and spectral efficiency on the global stage. We have an amazing group of luminaries to explore this topic with you today. We will introduce our panel of experts to engage in conversation to further explore 5G broadcasting and ATSC 3.0. With these excellent perspectives in mind, we can begin our panel discussion. We have four incredible panelists, including Shashi Shekhar Vempati, CEO of Prasar Bharti; Parag Naik, co-founder and CEO of Saankhya Labs; Manish Vyas, President Communications M&E Business of Tech Mahindra; and Sesh Simha, VP of Advanced Technology of One Media at Sinclair Broadcast Group. I would first like to invite each panelist to briefly share their thoughts on 5G broadcasting and ATSC 3.0 as India and the US collaborate on state-of-the-art wireless technology. Perhaps we can start with Mr. Vempati. In addition to the keen insights you shared with us, I wonder if you could elaborate on a few points. For example, India Premier League season just concluded. Congratulations to Mumbai. I understand that potentially millions of people watched the playoffs on mobile phones. Do you think a converged system of ATSC 3.0 broadcast and LTE 5G unicast could improve quality of service during events like this?
Thank you, Madeleine. My compliments to ATSC and the US-India Business Council for hosting this panel discussion. And congratulations to both ATSC and TSDSI for the MOU that you have signed recently. As you rightly pointed out, India as a market has been seeing increasing explosive growth of mobile data consumption. And a large part of this mobile data consumption is video. In fact, we have had some studies that have shown that the video consumption in rural India has surpassed on mobile devices, has surpassed urban India. And a large part of that is thanks to the events that you just now described, like IPL, which see astronomical levels of viewership. And today, all of that viewership is happening on unicast, as you pointed out. It's happening on the regular cellular networks, and we will soon hit that inflection point where the regular cellular networks will not be able to handle this kind of capacity. And I think this is where it becomes very interesting to look at technologies, emerging technologies like ATSC 3.0 and 5G broadcasting. If we could leverage the broadcast spectrum, the broadcast infrastructure, to directly reach mobile phones and smartphones and deliver the content that the consumers are looking for, I think we have a game changer here. And this is a challenge not only for the cellular operators, but more so for traditional broadcasters like Prasar Bharti. Today, we are increasingly seeing that a lot of the consumption of linear television has moved to smart devices. It's increasingly happening on smartphones, tablets, and smart TVs, and so on. So it becomes all the more challenging for traditional broadcasters to stay connected with the audience, to continue to engage with this audience, especially the young audience who are increasingly on mobile phones. So this is as much a need for the broadcasters as it is a need for the cellular operators. So at this intersection is this convergence that you're talking about between broadcast and the broadband internet technologies. And we are very keen to see how ATSC 3.0 and the emerging standards from 3GPP on mobile broadcasting can solve this problem and create this opportunity for both India and the United States.
Thank you, Mr. Vempati. Very much appreciate the insights, and I agree. I think that it is becoming an inflection point. And it's interesting because in India, with so many people watching video on direct to mobile, it sort of creates a special pain point, but a special opportunity for leadership. And we very much salute the efforts that are ongoing within India to work these problems through. I'd now like to kindly ask Mr. Naik from Saankhya Labs to share his thoughts with us.
Thank you, Madeleine. It's a privilege to be on this panel. Thank you, and IMC again. As a practitioner, I would like to take a bit of an inside-out view to explain what 5G broadcast is all about. Fundamentally, for that, you have to take a step back and look at what is the nature of broadcasting. Traditionally, broadcasting networks are different from unicast in the sense that they are what I call constant quality networks. So, which means they're provisioned for the worst case scenario for every user to receive the same quality, right? Unlike a cellular network that actually gives you a variable quality experience. So, just to expand from what Shashi said, while video is a primary driver, there are a lot of other use cases for what I call the broadcast bit. This include firmware updates for enterprises, for cars, especially maps for autonomous cars, which are basically this one-to-many application, and also OTT video. Non-linear video can also be broadcast sent over the broadcast video because of a whole lot of technologies that are getting into the phones, especially because you've got so much storage. You could pre-position content into a phone via the broadcast channel instead of the unicast, which gets expensive. The other important aspect of broadcasting traditionally has been that they have always been high tower, which means you have one single tower per city, and that limits indoor coverage as well as it also gives you a limited pipe. As part of 5G broadcast, we are looking at rolling out a cellularized transmit architecture that gives you uniform signal coverage in a coverage area, right? So that uniform SNR and coverage area that ensures that you could receive content on a negative gain phones, right? Unlike traditional broadcasts, which have been optimized for rooftop reception with a 10-15 dB plus 15 dB gain antenna. Now, from a business perspective, for for too long, broadcast networks and the cellular networks have operated in a silo, right? And they have been optimized for for a particular use case. So taking that step further up in 5G, you got this concept of a slice where a certain piece of content or a certain kind of service with its own set of constraints as its own network, as its own virtual network, and broadcast with its unique set of constraints which are different from EMMB, which is high-speed broadband or IoT, deserves its own slice. So in the 5G umbrella, it's but natural that you have a convergence of these two disparate but yet very important complementary technologies, right? And lastly, from a mobile operator's perspective, one of the key problems that most mobile operators face is how do they increase capacity, in high dense urban areas, and increasing capacity comes with a big cost, especially for mobile networks, especially for the mid-band spectrum, which is where there's a high capacity radios. Broadcasting here comes into a play. We have done a lot of analysis, especially in areas where there's a lot of video consumption. Overlay broadcast network that offloads video can actually give you between 5 to 6x improvements in terms of capex and opex for the same throughput. Yeah, Madeleine. Yeah.
Thank you, Parag. And before we move on, first I want to say thank you for discussing the various use cases in addition to television and video services, such as software downloads, pre-positioning content in local storage, and of course there's the advanced emergency messaging, which is critical for the public broadcaster to have a platform that reaches pretty much everybody, whether they've got a television set or a phone or whatever. I wonder, before we move to Manish, I wonder, Parag, if you can just expand just a little bit on that last point you made regarding the business opportunity and how that might affect, commerce.
Yeah. So, just to give you an back of the envelope analysis, Reliance Jio, which is our largest network in India, has about 300,000 LTE sites, right, covering the nation. They deliver about 2 GB of data. For the same data, if they want to expand it to 3 GB of constant video, they have to double or almost double the capex. Whereas with a broadcast overlay network, we could get away with about 50,000-60,000 sites and give you more or less the same capacity without any overload in the system. Yeah. So it's 1/5. It's almost 1/5, and that's very region specific. Probably in the US, in downtown New York, or in downtown Mumbai, you probably have more number of sites. We have done some radio planning analysis, and whereas in the suburban you need fewer ones. But overall, with a mix of high capacity urban, then rural and suburban sites, you get almost 5x capex reduction.
Wow.
That is fundamentally because also the nature of the broadcast signal. It's in the UHF band, and it tends to have better indoor coverage than say the LT signal in India, which is in the 800-900 megahertz and mostly in the 2100 megahertz range. That's anyway is not an advantage of broadcast per se, but for some reason, from a legacy perspective, broadcast has always been associated with the lower upper UHF spectrum, and that gives you this inherent advantage of indoor coverage.
Great. Thank you for expanding on that. Manish, please share your thoughts from the point of view of Tech Mahindra. Thank you.
Sorry, I need to unmute. Thank you so much, Madeleine, and so happy to be on this very distinguished panel. And I thank IMC for and congratulate them for organizing this. And love the points that Mr. Vempati and Parag mentioned. But taking a cue and things forward from where Parag left, he mentioned something interesting. he said that 5G inherently has a concept of slice. And these slices, as the broader industry continues to get warmed up to the idea of 5G, I think presents some tremendous opportunity, not just in the broad telecom mobile realm, but clearly in the broadcast realm. I may even add, not just in the conventional broadcast realm, but to the ideas that you started off on a very interesting point with Mr. Vempati on IPL. I must say that someone who lives in suburban Texas, that I do, in a time zone that is not conducive, I think it is the capabilities that we now have that are available to us even before 5G hits that allows me to have a seamless experience of not just IPL and of course, go Mumbai, but even an India beating Australia earlier this week, is something that whole rich experience across the world is just going to explode. Thanks to Slice, thanks to the format of that 5G has, and with the collaboration with standards like NTSC 3.0. Here are some exciting use cases that I am truly pumped about. Just taking a cue, and I'm just picking it up from, since you started with cricket, you now got it, Madeleine. I can't stop talking about cricket. Imagine a scenario post this pandemic where people are back in offices, people are very busy. We are all busy even now, but we still can afford a little bit of independence in terms of how we work. As people are back to the old normal, assuming that the new normal is also very similar in some shape, you will not have some of the people experience real-time, real action that happens, right? And the post-action updates on any live event, whether it is sports or otherwise, is not always really very friendly, because even if you convert a 4-hour game into a 30-minute highlight package, it still is a 30-minute, right? And I'm not interested in watching all 30 minutes. I'm only interested in watching that 1 minute magical moment when something happens. Now, with AI and the fact that the networks are going to be inherently more software defined and software centric, which means they will have a much better ability to process data. We are talking a scenario where somebody will get potentially an alert on their phone and be able, only that one person, only me, who's, let's say, just wanting to experience a certain football play or a certain game, from a cricket game. I'm just able to experience that right there, right that moment, in the process also contributing to the economic well-being of the service provider, because I will be happy to pay a little premium, even if it is 10 cents, for that one particular clip, which only I am getting contextually, because there is a very solid ability for hyper-personalization in this context. So I'm going beyond the realm of the core underlying infrastructure technology into the possibilities that can happen with the use cases. And as you go beyond just the conventional broadcast into what the up and coming, Mr. Vempati spoke about rural, I would also add the Gen Y. They are not as much going to be spending their time on linear content. We're talking an explosive growth in things like gaming and esports. That's another brilliant opportunity as we bring the capabilities across all these wide range of technologies together to be able to derive and drive a much greater experience, across these areas. And if there is a third dimension to where the possibilities just become more exponential, is they say that about 80% of all data on a 5G network is going to be video. We are all about video right now on this panel. Imagine industry verticals which have historically dependent on either a live or an audio or some kind of a written communication is increasingly going to depend on video channels. Telemedicine, for example, I think we have seen some phenomenal growth in that space. We probably may not even have scratched the surface in that space yet. So overall, as things stand, I think as the 5G adoptions increase, as the integration with of different standards from a broadcast standpoint become better and better, and as the use cases and the needs from both consumers as well as enterprises become more profound, I believe that 5G in broadcast is not just a technology or a platform. It is indeed a platform for innovation. It is a platform that will spawn whole host of ideas that may not exist today, but because the technology will exist, the innovators will come in and join the party at some point in time to start opening up the opportunities that are there. So I, for one, as the system integrator, after all technologies come into play from Parag and from Sesh, after all the policymakers like Mr. Vempati and the standards bodies like you, all of you do your job, somebody has to stitch all of that together. So if you see a smile on my face, it is because I sense a huge opportunity to be able to contribute to the innovation cycle as an integrator and as somebody who has to put skills to job and to make these things happen.
Yeah, very exciting. Integration, innovation, thinking about having a flexible platform that can enable all sorts of new use cases, and then the creative minds across the world take over, and you never know what's going to happen. So appreciate those remarks very much. Mr. Simha, would you like to share kindly your thoughts?
Thank you, Madeleine, and it's very fortunate that I'm in this group of folks who each of them bring a very important piece of service or technology to the business of and development of broadcast. So Sinclair Broadcast Group is one of the leading providers of sports, local news, and terrestrial broadcast. So you can see that the two words I mentioned, sports and news, means that we believe deeply in the fact that a one-to-many broadcast will provide the best user experience. But also very, very passionately committed to the development of bringing broadcast to every smartphone and every mobile device that we can, because we think that that is the best way to connect people to their communities. In fact, we're one of the world's largest providers of local news, and we have found during COVID that in fact our local news stations and our local news readers and weather folks and have just built that great relationship. So we're hoping that, and we know that in India as well, there are a very large number of regional channels that are news based. So we think that the experience that we bring to deploying mobile is going to be very useful to broadcasters around the world. As far as the technology, we have played a very important and foundational role in the development of the physical layer of ATSC 3. And I can tell you that there's really nothing in 3GPP or anywhere else that compares to its performance. And what that translates to for terrestrial broadcasters like us, as we deploy both the high tower and as we deploy cellularized broadcast, is that it's going to make a significant difference in either improvement in coverage or significant reduction in capital expenditures for equipment. And we could probably be looking at billions of dollars of, when you look at nationwide rollouts. And on that note, we have actually been tirelessly deploying ATSC 3 in the United States. So it is a mature technology. Standards are complete. 2020 and 2021 are the years of deployment of terrestrial broadcasters like us and many others. In early 2021, Parag talked about cellularized broadcast. So in early 2021, we will be deploying in the greater Washington area a 10 to 12 site cellularized broadcast system that is going to be our lab and test bed to show ourselves, to show the communities, to show government that we broadcasters are no longer, have old ideas that we've come to the 5G table. And on that note, I'm actually proud to say that one of the world's oldest television transmitting stations, it's WRGB in Schenectady, New York, started transmitting in 1928. It is still on the air, and it is a Sinclair station. So again, on technology, we've been tirelessly not just working on the device side, and we have a great partnership with Saankhya Labs. We've made major investments in India, and we now have a reference smartphone with ATSC3 embedded in it. And both in India and the United States, we will be doing field trials. In the US, we're likely to be working with mobile network operators to showcase this. We're also deeply involved in building what we call the application framework for this. Today, if we think of a television set as something that, or you turn something on and you have to tune to channels and so on, and all that's going to go away because of the fact that everything is going to be app-based. So it's going to be a complete integration of broadcast and over the top OTT. So if you have a device and you have programs, then the consumer will not know where that program is coming from, because what we do, just like Manish said, we use AI, and we can deliver seamlessly what goes best on broadcast and then what goes best on unicast. So that user experience is something we're very, very much committed to. And finally, I think that one of the deep beliefs that we have in bringing a broadcast capability to every smartphone is in the area of public safety, is in the area of emergency alerting, is in the area of first responders. So we're engaged in all of these. We're tireless about it, and we'll continue to pursue a relentless path to bring ATSC3 into the 5G world. Thank you.
Thank you. So I think that some of the innovation and innovators that Manish referred to is underway. And very excited about all of these opportunities, and such a pleasure to have Mr. Vempati with us, who is the primary service for the public in India. Just such a hugely important service to the community, and how best to serve that community during COVID and beyond is 100% the main mission. So we only have a few minutes left. And with our remaining time, I wonder if each of you could articulate basically your number one goal for US-India collaboration on 5G broadcasting and ATSC 3.0. In other words, what is your brightest hope for this effort? Maybe we can start with Mr. Vempati.
Thank you, Madeleine. And as you rightly pointed out, with every crisis comes an opportunity. And this crisis with COVID-19 was no different. One of the biggest challenges that India faced was to keep the schooling going, despite challenges with broadband access. So broadcast turned out to be a game changer in tele-education and education through radio broadcast to keep the knowledge, the learning, and the knowledge sharing going. And these are the kinds of use cases that we will look forward to when we see this convergence between broadcast and mobile phones happening. To your specific question on, what is the number one priority? India and the United States are two of the world's largest democracies. They're also the largest markets in the free world for mobile phones and apps based on mobile phones. Sesh rightly pointed out. Ultimately, it's going to be about apps. And the single most opportunity that I see is to create a ubiquitous experience, an app experience, by which one discovers and consumes these direct-to-mobile broadcast services. I'm reminded of the early days of 802.11b when the Wi-Fi Alliance came about to create that ubiquitous experience. So it didn't matter whether you were on a laptop or on a mobile phone or any other device, you had a standard symbol for Wi-Fi and a very consistent way in which you could discover and consume services over the Wi-Fi network capability. So I think the moment calls for a similar sort of a global alliance, and perhaps India and the United States could take the leadership here to create this direct-to-mobile global alliance of sorts, which creates this ubiquitous experience and propels the convergence between mobile phones and broadcasting over the emerging 5G standards, leveraging technologies like ATSC 3.0. So that to me is the number one opportunity for India and US to come together.
I think that's an incredibly great idea. You think about looking at your mobile phone and you can see the Wi-Fi symbol there, you can see the Bluetooth symbol there, and to consider the development of a ubiquitous symbol that customers can understand across the globe as something that that India and the US could collaborate on in the early days. I think that's pretty neat. Sesh, you have your prototype mobile phone, so maybe you can get started on that. But with that, I'll let you have the next word.
Thank you, Madeleine. And of course, my goal was very simple when I joined Sinclair accidentally, just coming in for a cup of coffee with the president of the division that I work for. He says, your job is to get as many phones on the planet integrated with mobile TV with ATSC 3. So I said, all right, I'll start on that mission, and that's underway. And what I see in this cooperation is that eventually that the standard that gets deployed is not just an ATSC 3.0 standard, but it will be a TSDSI 3.0 standard that Prasar Bharti will shape, and people like Saankhya and Prasar Bharti, and pick, the subset of features that are important and optimized for the citizens of India. And I do believe that if it's a mobile profile, that same profile will also very adequately fit the needs of large populations in the United States. Thank you.
Thanks. And we'll let Manish get the next word, and we're going to let Parag have the last word, because Saankhya Labs is a very interesting organization that sits also in TSDSI and in ATSC. So we're going to let Parag have the last word. So Manish, please let us know, what is your brightest hope for this?
You just spoke my mind. I would always love to have Parag the last word, Madeleine. So you asked a question. I think it is, in terms of the India-US collaboration, well, clearly it goes into two broad spectrums. One, it is very clear that from a, like Mr. Vempati said, we are talking about two of the largest markets. One of them, which is India, with about 1.2 billion phones, networks running, mobile networks I'm talking about, running at about 95 to 97% capacity. And then on top of it, take you back to the opening point you made about the cricket and IPL, with a concurrent event like 30, 40, 50 million people watching something at the same time. It does put an enormous load onto that network, and hence in some shape or form does impact the experience as well. There is no broadcast mode on internet yet. With the kind of work that can happen with 5G in broadcast with NTSC 3.0, we are talking about opening up a completely new chapter, not just a page, in being able to deliver an experience and a capability to the consumers, and like I said earlier, even to the broader enterprise, because of the kind of use cases that will spawn as the technology is understood better and different pieces of technology comes together, from AI to data to, of course, adoption of the compute capabilities with cloud and edge. I think all in all, we're talking about a collaboration that can only serve extremely well to the improvement in service delivery to the consumers and enterprises at one level. On the other hand, the process of innovation, India is sitting with one of the best intellectual capital from a technology, from a invention capability standpoint. With the geopolitical scenario as it stands today, the mutual trust and the security clearly gains the most paramount importance in people's mind. And India has enjoyed that level of trust from the global markets for decades now, because of the kind of services that all of us have provided, right? We as a company survive and thrive because of this trust that people have entrusted in companies like us. We are a 135,000 people company with about 70,000 of those based in India, delivering world-class capabilities to customers across the world. All of this is essentially a foundation for a greater collaboration to do more in the area of technology development, whether it is on the devices side, whether on the application side or use cases, or for that matter, even on the underlying infrastructure, something that clearly is a huge opportunity as we go forward. And the kind of work that Saankhya is doing, I think, is a case in point. We invested in a company ourselves, a company called Altiostar, some time back, exactly with the same view that that there is a huge possibility in driving the process of innovation in India, and India becoming a platform itself for creating new technologies and delivering to the global world. So out and out, I think there is growth and there is opportunities written all over this page, and hence collaboration, I think, is not even a choice. It is absolutely mandatory for all of us.
Well, wonderful. And thank you very much, Manish. And I think we can turn over to Parag, who we're looking at Saankhya Labs as kind of the king of collaboration with the various work that they're doing both in the US and in India. So maybe you can give us the final word.
Sure, Madeleine. I think Manish taking the cricket analogy, the number 11 batsman is actually the worst, right? So anyway, so yeah. So we will. I just like to say that we have to bridge the divide. I think in both countries there is this digital divide, and broadcast has this capability to bridge the divide. We have similar issues on the rural education and tele-education to an extent. Maybe we are a microsome of what the US is. That needs to be broken, and we also need to break the divide between the broadcast and the cellular network that's been falsely drawn for some reason, right? For historical reasons mostly. Once we break those divides, I believe that you'll have a force multiplier, both in terms of the amount of capacity that you would get, and also in terms of the coexistence of both. And I think convergence is not just of the network, but also I think we need to have a convergence of the minds across the seas between India and the US. And at Saankhya, we've been working in various standard bodies, not just TSDS and ATSC. We also are part of the European standard, just to ensure that we create a global awareness that this is a very important aspect. And speaking from an Indian perspective, I think we are in a unique position for the first time, in decades, to actually lead and from the forefront in the building and the deployment of technology as exciting as 5G and broadcast. With that, thanks, Madeleine, again for inviting me on this panel.
Well, thank you very much to all four of you for these great ideas and great insights. I have very bright hopes myself for the convergence of 5G broadcast, ATSC 3.0, and how machine learning is going to help bridge those gaps. But I love the concept of bridging the divides. And I look forward to the next chapter. As Manish pointed out, we're not turning a page. This is a new chapter. So with many thanks to Mr. Simha, Mr. Vempati, Mr. Naik, Mr. Vyas, thank you very much for the panel. And with that, I'd like to close this session. And thank you very much to India Mobile Congress 2020 for the opportunity for all of us.
Thank you.
Thank you.